Hello, everyone, and welcome back to today's online test conf. We are right now we're entering the middle of our schedule for today. I wanted to say that I'm happy for this next session, but I'm actually honored that the pretty amazing people, because we need to be gender neutral here for the 9 out of 10 testers, agreed to be with us and basically do this next session. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you with us?
Well,
Yes,
we
we
do
are.
have this tradition of like, are we on yet? Are we there?
Yeah.
Are we there?
Hello. Are we on?
Is this thing on?
Is this thing there?
Are we being recorded yet?
Let me check. Yes, we are. In any case, I'm not going to even bother you anymore. I'm just going to make myself very, very, very small and let you all go on with it. So, everyone, enjoy.
Thanks for
Joe.
that introduction, Joe. Lovely. Hi, everyone, and welcome, beautiful people, to this panel session. 9 out of 10 testers have a nice rant, a nice little chat about the things that annoy us, that piss us off, and that we generally want to address. So I'm looking forward to also interacting with you. And let me just tell you quickly how things are going to go today. So we've got the Q&A open. We're watching that. We've got the chat open on the Slack channel. Those are the two best places for you to post any comments that you have. If you want us to react to it, we will pick those up as we're talking and get your interaction into our session. The other thing is I am your moderator today. So I will be guiding this bunch of idiots and helping them each get enough screen time. And today we're talking about onboarding at a new job. We will be filling the entire time slot right up until the full hour time, which is all 45 minutes. We will not stop talking till the very end. So if there is further discussion, we will continue it on the Slack channel. So just know we won't be having that Q&A bit at the end there. All right. So let's start by introducing ourselves. As a quick round, tell us where you work and when your last onboarding experience was. And we're going to start with Shay.
All right, I get to start this time. So I'm Shay. I work at Prima Insurance, and I'm a senior quality engineer there. And yeah, my last onboarding experience was, well, during my time at Prima. I came on board, and yeah, it was meant to be a sort of a 3-month process. It was interesting.
That's interesting. Thanks. Moving on to Hannah.
Yes, hello, I'm Hanna Strander, and I work as a quality catalyst at Devoteam Creative Tech in Sweden. And my last onboarding experience was a whopping 4.5 years ago, so it's been quite a while for me.
That'll be good then. Chris.
I am Chris Armstrong. I work as I'm a product quality manager at Provar Testing, the Salesforce testing solution, lest we forget. Anyway, my last onboarding was at Provar around about almost 2 years ago, and it was 100% remote.
Well done. Veerle.
Hi, I'm Veerle Berg and I work for Dutch Railways, and my last onboarding was in August. It was very recent.
And last but not least, I am Sanne Visser. I work for Capgemini, and I am currently, as we speak, on week 2 of a new assignment. So I am right in the middle of things.
It's as if we planned it. Oh my God.
Oh my God. We kind of did, but that's fine. So let's start us off with annoyance. Absolutely worst thing, you start your job, but you don't have a laptop, your accounts, your workplace, your workstation, you don't know where to go. Has any of this ever happened to any of you? Because it must be rare, right? Because this is like fundamentally what you basically need to start on day one.
This was the introduction to the talk that I did this year. I had no computer, no access to any tools. I did have printed out PDFs of regulations, which was great.
Amazing.
I wasn't introduced to my team, and my line manager went on leave on my second day.
Wow. That's a whammy.
Okay, you win. We said we were going to talk for the whole thing, but you win. Let's go.
Yeah, it is. We'll just
That's it.
give you
Wrap
the
up.
award for the worst onboarding ever.
But I was there. I was still around people, and it was different. I mean, I was petrified, but who isn't petrified when they start a new role?
I
It's
don't
always
know.
nervous making.
Is it nervous making?
I think so. I mean, there's a certain expectation, or I put a certain expectation on myself. So it's maybe unnecessary, but you go in there and you're thinking, hey, I've got to perform, and I come from a consulting background, so you're meant to sort of deliver from day one, aren't you? So there's still a hangover of that when I go into a permanent role. And so you're there thinking, oh man, I've got to know everything. I'm expected to know everything, and you just got to say, chill, dude. It's day one.
Even without the pressure of having to deliver and having to add value from day one, I just hate not being completely at ease and like in a routine somewhere. So even just the act of walking into a building, because I go to the office once a week, even just the act of walking in there and still being like awkward about scanning your badge, and you don't know how long the little gate takes to open, and like you wave at the receptionist but you don't know her name, like those things, I hate those. It's just the little practicalities of working in a new place but not really knowing what goes on there. And that's just aside from having to deliver from day one, obviously.
Yeah, having to learn all the new names and everything, and like the personalities. I mean, I had once starting a new job where a manager came up to me the first day saying it's nice to have a bit of female touch in the team because I was the first female.
Oh.
That's the first conversation I had with him. So, I mean,
Oh God.
Oh, no, that's bad. But I do think, Chris, you had an even worse example, because it was you had a new employee and you were introducing around the company.
Yeah, well, I wasn't even at the point where they're introducing them. So we had a new starter, and they came and they were sat down, and I was just helping them get a feel for things. So I actually got hold of a machine and got them access to these things. Given that my experience was so bad, I made sure that they had all these things, and we were sat and I was trying to ease them in, because starting a new job can be pretty overwhelming with all the new stuff. And so I was planning later on just giving them a tour of the office and introducing them to a handful of people. But then someone just sort of came along, just wandered over, and a slightly older gentleman in this instance. The new starter was a younger female member of the staff, and he just stood behind us whilst we were discussing. Didn't say anything, just stood there sort of uncomfortably slightly too close, and was like, so when are you going to introduce this young lady to us all?
Never. She's gonna leave after you
Oh.
did this.
Oh,
You ruined it.
immediate HR
Oh.
violation on day
Yeah.
one.
Oh God.
How does that still happen?
Oh,
But well
gosh.
done on you for having a plan and like preventing this onboarding experience that we all love to hate. So
it's context. Context is the king, right? You provide what you can to make sure that the troubles that we've had aren't ones that are shared with new folks. They come on.
yeah, that's true. So in the chat earlier, Dermot had an interesting comment where he put a dichotomy in, like you either have a death by onboarding experience where you get a manual thrown at you thicker than your head, or you get we expect you to hit the ground running that Shay was talking about. We hired you for your expertise and we expect you to immediately deliver value. I found this an interesting sort of dichotomy, because the one adds a whole bunch of pressure, the other can be incredibly dull and boring. Is this something you all recognize?
Especially
Absolutely.
death by onboarding, yeah.
Oh,
Death by
man.
onboarding.
But like people are always nice about it, or at least in my experience, people are nice about it. So they'll say things like, we don't expect you to understand all of this straight away, and like, it'll take a bit of time to get into the swing of things. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I could take my time. And like, oh, you don't internalize that. You think I need to work from day one. But like at least people are nice about it. But then obviously, like, you do need to know all of the things. You need the domain knowledge, you need to know how all of the tooling works and everything. And so I understand that in the first few weeks there's really nothing else to do than to explain all of these things to you. But at some point, and that's usually not around 5 for me, that's usually just after lunch, my brain is full. It won't take more information. You can continue talking at it. I'm not going to remember, and I'm not going to care anymore at all. I'm just there like,
Yeah, there's this brilliant book, I think it's by Daniel Pink, but don't pin me down on that. It's called When, that actually talks about like you have a chronotype, and it sounds like yours is that I am a morning type, where in the afternoon.
No. I'm absolutely not a morning type. It's just that you're expected to show up for your onboarding at 9, and so we start at 9. No, I'm absolutely an afternoon kind of person.
You're just fully overloaded at a time you can't really process anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get given
And
the manual, isn't it?
Mm.
And you think,
Yeah.
and then they expect you to sort of sit there for 7 hours just reading through it, and you're like, it's not going to work, man. You know,
No,
I need a
but
bit of a
like,
mix-up.
the people at my last onboarding were nice about that as well, because they realized like you can't just let a person read all day. Also, I didn't have a laptop yet, so I couldn't read it on anywhere. But no, but it's like, I think it's really nice when people sort of invest the time and like talk to you and explain you things and show you charts and shit. I love that. But at some point, like it's enough. I can't absorb that much information in one day. And the last time it actually happened, that someone kind of went like pure sympathetic, like, hey, so how are you feeling? Are you full of information? And this was like around 2 p.m. So it was like, oh yeah, I'm pretty full, man. Like, yeah, oh my God, my brain is so full. And it was like, I understand. Anyway, and then continue telling me shit, and I was like, and Joy talking to me, or rather at me. I'm not gonna remember.
Enough emotional intelligence to ask the question, not enough to actually then stop pumping information your way.
Right, yeah, that sums it up.
Yeah.
I also have a bit of a story about like information overload. I don't know if we have time for a story time. Yeah, I'm the moderator. We do.
Yeah.
So the current one that I'm doing the onboarding, there is an access thing. It just generally takes 3 to 6 weeks to get all the account stuff organized. And they warned me nicely ahead of time. I knew that was going to happen. So I've got the thing going that Chris had, and I think that you also had, Fiona, where you start getting sent documents to just like, here's a couple of things. You can at least read them and get an idea for a few things. Absolutely great. But then I got like the test plan, I got the test strategy, I got bits and dribs and drabs, and it was wonderful until at some point somebody just sent me their entire testing confluence, which came to 893 pages. Like, here you go.
Enjoy.
Enjoy. And I did respond back, and now what do you expect me to do with this? Like, this is just, I don't even know how to manage this information, let alone work through it. Like, what were you thinking sending this to me? And it was just like,
but
yeah, then you have a reference.
Slow hand clap. That's what you need to do.
Recognizing that and saying that.
Well, yeah. I don't know if that's maybe also part of hitting the ground running, is to be like, I don't want to deal with this bullshit expectation that I'm going to have to read 893 pages. Because honestly, even if I could, I don't want to.
There's another thing, isn't there, where just because this is something that helped you or you wish that you had when you started, doesn't mean it works for everybody else, because some people consume things better by seeing and doing. Some people do better by reading and understanding. There's a whole variety of different ways of consuming learning. And if you only ever present one way of doing it, some people are going to be mega overwhelmed or just ignore the stuff and then go and pursue other things which may well break the system and the way things have been set up or not, and that's part of the overwhelming thing as well, because it's like, you've given me all this, but this isn't something that I will find easy to consume, and if you're someone who's giving that and you're not aware that some other people may find it different, lo and behold, somebody maybe is different to you. Their desires and wants and consumption of, not consummation, that's very different, consumption of information
oh my gosh,
is very different, then that is going to be a very difficult thing. It's why just having a single way of doing stuff just doesn't work, and that's really, really difficult to manage, especially if there's going to be a huge variety of folks joining your team. I think testers, broadly speaking, come from a massive spectrum of backgrounds and in everything. Like it, I just
Speaking of pacing and like one size fits all, how do we feel about these compulsory e-learnings that every company has on things like privacy, GDPR.
I had to
Oh.
do a bunch of those in August. And I didn't actually mind because it was something to do. Because I was there, I didn't have my own laptop, so I had to go into the office every day to use a computer there because I did have my account, so I could use the hardware there, just not at home. And like I couldn't set up any of my own personalized stuff, right? I couldn't start downloading things that I needed because I didn't have my own machine. So for me, it was actually great because it was something that was mandatory that I needed to get out of the way anyway, and that was clearly productive and quantifiable and a box to tick off. Other than that,
Also, it's something
I
that
don't know.
is like the few parts that are actually documented tend to be do these compulsory e-learnings and get your
Right.
badge here. Like those at the very least tend to be put down on paper somewhere in terms of
Yeah.
onboarding. Like there's a plan at least for those things.
There's that little release of dopamine for a little thing to tick off your to-do list, and that was great.
All right, here's a question for you as testers. What onboarding stuff has been really tough with testware or access to descriptions of that type of work? What has really gotten in your way at your new jobs?
I mean, at my current job, when I started, I was the first tester there, and the project was not live yet. So we didn't really have anything set up. And when I asked just like, how do I actually get into this? They're like, you can just read the code. And because they had nothing documented at that point.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. It took quite a bit of time because this is a case where I got thrown into the assignment. I mean, people understood that I didn't know the domain, but it was still like, oh yeah, just do your thing. And you're like, okay. Worked out well in the end, but it took quite a while to get the domain knowledge because, yeah, I mean, developers are fine with just knowing a small bit normally and just working their way up, but you kind of want to understand the use case of the whole system as a tester, and that takes a bit longer, and it's a lot different from the onboarding that the developers get in the team.
I've also had the opposite thing. Have you ever gone and looked at the code and then had the reaction, why do you even want to look at that? Like, we didn't anticipate you needing access to that. So like, what are you doing? Have you had that happen? That's an interesting one in a variation. Like, instead of here's the code and read it, it was like, we've given you no access and you now need to go find a way to actually be able to review the code.
I have not had that. I've always had that people throw me into the code and just expect me to like be fluent in coding, which is not quite the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just sort of like just fire up Docker, compile the app locally, and then you'll be able to test it. It's like, oh yeah, good. There's an assumption you're making about my skills.
Yeah.
We hired you as an expert, Shay. How come this is an issue? Like, seriously,
Exactly. Yeah.
hit the ground running already.
Why do you not
Okay.
know everything?
Yeah, all the
That's it,
things.
And why
But that
don't you know
does
it already?
bring us to kind of the next, like it's a very nice bridge to this whole, as an expert, starting somewhere new brings a whole other dimension, I feel, than it did when I was younger onboarding. I was more secure in the fact, well, I'm new and I'm young and I know nothing anyway. Now it's indeed, there's a reputation that goes and it's far supersedes me and it's there before I even join. And there's all these expectations that I can't even manage or mold before I even start. And it does feel like imposter syndrome is one side of it, but the other side of it is like, I can't control that beast of what is already expected of me before I've even come and said hi. Is that something you guys struggle with?
Well, yeah, when I used to work in a consultancy, that was I had an instance there where I so obviously in a consultancy, the higher ups are sort of selling a service into this company, so they're sort of bigging you up a bit and making you sound like you're like the bee's knees. You're exactly what they want, and my company may have, shall we say, exaggerated my skills slightly. around test automation and things like that. And so, you know, you walk in and they're like, oh yeah, just go and just go and write some tests and run some tests for us, would you? And you're like, about what? Sorry, what? You write the tests. Okay, well, I can review them and things like that with you, but it's not my bag. And so there was that kind of like, okay, I'll go and do that, and ringing the guys going, what did you sell? Tell me who I am meant to be here, and that way I can adjust expectations.
Yeah.
I recognize the thing, like maybe not so much because I feel that I have a reputation to uphold, but I do feel, let's say, more internalized. The longer I do this work, the worse I feel about not being good at certain things. And so the less I feel that I can sell myself as someone who's actually employable, because I've been doing testing for like 6 years at this point. I'm like, I'm still not really code literate, and I do feel increasingly bad about that.
Why do they even bother hiring you, honestly, Veerle? Like 6 years in and you do not know how to do these things?
I know, right?
It's as if testing is more than just being code literate.
I know, but this is the whole imposter syndrome thing. And I've actually when I started at this job, I in the first month I was actually pretty down, because I was like, I'm not sure I can do this, and I'm not sure I'm going to survive the first month. So I got in touch with a few people that I know and admire, and Heather Reed had just before that published an article about like her successes at her new job. So I got in touch with her because I was like, I need to know your secret, man. And she gave me like the best tip that I've ever had. And she was like, find out by talking to people that you work with what success looks like in your role. Like, find out what it actually is that you need to be doing, because I realized later I had set myself a bar that was way, way up there with the International Space Station. And actually then asking like, what is success in this role really helped kind of getting that bar down to a level where I might actually reach it.
I think that's an excellent tip. And if you remember one thing today, folks, at least remember that one. Ask what success looks like as you're onboarding. Because honestly, you just reminded me, I really need to do that, even as I'm in the middle and in the muddle of this thing I'm in right now. I need to do the same thing. I'm going to redirect this a little because we have a lovely question in from, I think, Jane or Jana. It's about hybrid onboarding. So being remote and still needing to be onboarded. So the assignment located in this case in an entirely different country. Do you have any experiences with cross-border or long-distance onboardings and specific issues maybe with those?
I onboarded with an American team completely remotely as a result of not being allowed in the country, actually, as and when those things happened. And it was very difficult because I didn't know anybody who was in my time zone, and there was sort of 5, 6, up to 8 hours time difference with some of my team. Getting some sort of level of context, expectations, and understanding of what I'm supposed to do in the time when there isn't somebody to talk to, because I'm a big advocate for talking with other human beings as much as you can when you start to get an understanding of everything that's going on in the company, why these things exist, who should be this person, and doing a bit of pairing to learn those sorts of things. And so if you're in different countries, there's lots of interesting things to consider beyond just time availability. There's also pop culture references, things that we might use all the time. The use of language, even like American and English should be kind of similar, but actually you end up saying, if I say holidays to an American, they're thinking Christmas time. That's a different thing. But it gets even more different with folks in other countries, and actually trying to understand where they're coming from and present where I'm coming from in a way that's accessible. Your brain goes like into top gear of just trying to understand the optics. What does this look like? How would somebody else understand this? And you have to make yourself very vulnerable, because otherwise these whole things where you think, oh, it's gone too late now, everyone thinks I'm an expert. There's a quote from Henry Winkler, who was the Fonz in Happy Days, who said, assumptions are the termites of relationships. And it's a really, really cool quote, because we are full of assumptions in testing and everything. But if you just start and you're presented as the expert, or you know things, especially remotely, people don't know or see what you're doing necessarily unless you are actually projecting those things. If you're not asking those questions, asking for help, people aren't necessarily going to check in on you. And it's you have to be kind of extrovert, whether you want to be or not, to try and do those things, unless you've got a super awesome line manager who can help you with those things. And you don't always have those things. So being proactive, whether you want to or not, asking those awkward questions. Who do I need to talk to? And when you talk to one person, who else do I need to talk to? Take a lot of notes and try and put a jigsaw puzzle together.
Well, having a really good line manager like that seriously helps. There's another example of what not to do. There was one client where we had a monthly test group discussion, which was more like a bring your own sandwich kind of thing. But it was held at exactly the same time every month. And every month the meeting would start like this. Oh, I see nobody's joined from Australia. All right, well, I'm moving on. Let's introduce the people. And every single month, he was missing all the testers from Australia. And like, how do you not realize that you are planning this meeting at a time when they are in bed? Like consistently for a year, you miss an entire group, but you don't figure out maybe why in their context that's happening. So yeah, that's really good advice. Also, I love that quote, termites.
Yeah. I have one thing. I have one thing to add as well.
Yeah.
Just sorry, Viola.
No,
yeah. Hi. No. Just the other thing I found really useful with onboarding, and this will work possibly with crossing borders as well, is whoever your line manager is, get time in the diary to speak to them either every day when you're first starting out, or once a week without fail, and you govern. You lead the leader effectively, because you can be left, as Chris said, to do your own thing in a different time zone, and then it's like, well, why didn't you do this? Why, so having that catch up regularly as you start off is really important.
Hela.
I just wanted to add another quote about assumptions, because when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me.
Yeah,
I think that's the better known one.
Oh, beautiful.
I apologize, and I will leave the chat now.
No, go be ashamed. Go be ashamed. That's too obvious. I'm going to bring us back to an earlier thing that we had about defining what success means. And I think it ties into what you said just now, Shay, about setting up that one-on-one with a line manager frequently. So there's a question here from Mikaita. Do you try and find out what the company expects during the interview or during the onboarding?
I saw that question, and I have a thought about that, because I think you try to figure it out during the interview, but with the way that the job market currently is, at least in Europe, there's more jobs than people, and I'm not sure that during the interview people are always entirely honest, or even that they fully understand what it is that they want. I feel like they can only tell you so much in an interview, and then once you start, that's when you find out what is really needed.
Also, you can be stupid in interviews as well. Like I, at my previous assignment, really didn't check that the onboarding was the way I wanted it to be, so I'd be set up for success. So I made sure this time, 2.5 weeks ago, to really ask, do you have a good onboarding? Are you happy with the way that's working? And I got these really enthusiastic, yes, we've got a really good onboarding process. You'll be in good hands, don't worry. It turns out what they meant is, yes, you'll get your badge and you'll get your laptop in a timely fashion, which is not what I meant in terms of setting me up for success. So there's also still miscommunication. Even if you ask during the interview, you cannot quite get to the level of detail maybe necessary, or be misunderstood anyway. So yeah, there's an excellent onboarding for my current assignment. It's really, really good. Yeah.
Your badge.
You got your badge. Yeah. So I think both, right? Try beforehand. But you do generally, when you actually hit the ground running, find out what you do need to do. maybe one advice, I don't know if you've ever used this, but like one thing that I did previously onboarding, not this assignment, but earlier, is I asked everyone the same set of questions during the onboarding to kind of figure out where everyone was at. And it both gave me structure for the first one-on-ones, getting to know people, and it gave me a good idea where maybe the expectations were from each role. So I would ask them, what do you think testing, how well do you think testing is being done on a scale from 1 to 10? Why is it a 10? How would we get to a 10? What one thing would you want me to do in my current position? And I had those kind of list of questions, and that was actually very useful. Has anyone done anything like that? Yeah, I'm not doing it currently. I'm realizing I had a thing that worked and I'm not even using it right now.
I think it's a really cool idea to have a set of questions to be asking everybody.
Yeah.
It also uncovers sort of knowledge gaps, so you know that other people don't know what you don't know either. So asking someone what success looks like is a very interesting question, I think, and you'll get 10 people asking 10 people, you get 10 different answers, and you may see a thread there, but also a lot of people don't really think that way, so you'll get really quite, as I said, quite interesting answers.
You set a really good precedent as well, don't you? Because you're by being open about those things early, by asking those questions, you are setting an example, regardless of level of seniority that you are. You're upfront doing those things. We talked about the danger of assumptions and stuff later, but if you're actually doing those things upfront, there's a level of transparency that we strive for in our profession, that if you're setting that example from the get-go, that's a really, really healthy thing to do, because it encourages other folks to do that. Unless, of course, you've gone and asked those questions and been shut down, in which case you might want to be looking for the exit.
Yeah, it did also give me a chance to do a nice 30-day in presentation where I summarized all the answers I got, which had a lot of overlap, right? So it's like I gave here's the scorecard you all give yourselves, and that kind of stuff. It was really fun to do. We have some more lovely comments. I think this one is interesting. Is it still worth carving out time with your line manager if they are not also in QA themselves? That's from Anonymous. And in a very similar vein, Carlo has commented, well, my manager codes and tests just like everyone who he manages. I'm assuming you're thinking that's a good thing. Any opinions about that? Like when they're not in your area, is it still worth that frequent check-in?
Absolutely. One of the things Chris is famous for saying is context is king, and that's what speaking with the line manager will give you is context about where he sees you. That's number one, or they see you, and number two is what the hell is going on here. They have been there longer. They very likely will have more of a view on the trajectory of the company, the application, how it's used, etc., etc. So 100% get that time in with your line manager. Also, it sets that sort of standard of you and I are going to be communicating. We are going to be communicating, because a lot of managers they just don't do that, and so you're managing the manager.
Yeah, it's that managing up thing again. There's a kind of sub question here as well. Whereas who else should you reach out to, especially if you've been hired as the senior QA? So there is no level up senior QA for you to report to. Who should you also be reaching out to?
That's something that actually happened to me in a previous job, where I had nobody who was my equal, and I had nobody who was above me that was from our specific craft, our domain, and I did feel very vulnerable and very alone, because there were things that I couldn't discuss with my reports, but also I had no peers that I could bounce ideas off and do things with. And in that instance, I reached out to folks in the testing community that I thankfully had already got established relationships with, and managed to build a bit of a support network there. But to the point of having a line manager who doesn't have a QA, a testing background or particular interest in those areas, let's not forget that line managers should have an interest in you as a person, your mental well-being, you as a person, your professional growth. There is an element of pastoral care that comes with being a good line manager, and very often one-on-ones may have nothing to actually do with the day job. And it's very important that people managers exist and are given the time to be a people manager over and above sometimes the skills and the updates and those sorts of things. And I think that can be quite often a forgotten art or trait that we discover in one-to-ones and catch-ups, because there's so many other pressures. But actually the value in having that relationship, a trusted relationship with a more senior person in your organization, it's huge.
I do want to add a few practical answers to the anonymous question, because while community is great and also you do still need your line manager, I do feel other people to reach out to would be the architect, the lead dev, the type of other senior roles that are job adjacent to you that you will work with a lot as the most senior tester. Those are logical places to sort of be more managing sideways. And another great place where you can get some of that peer support, because they'll likely be struggling with the same things with their employees and getting their testers up to scale and doing the one-on-ones with their developers. So that's another great place to reach out to. We have some time to talk about having overlap or not having overlap with your predecessor. So a great example currently is I stepped into a very sudden vacancy due to personal circumstances. So it was like the person was there and then they were gone and I had to step in pretty immediately. So there's no choice in the matter. But sometimes it does happen that companies seem to make the very conscious choice budget-wise not to arrange for overlap, which I think is excruciatingly painful. Unless of course there's somebody that's really pissed off with the company, I guess, or even then I would find it amusing to have some overlap with them.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you know, one of the top things is never burn your bridges. So even if you're pissed off with a company and you're doing onboarding, you know, have a care. This person's coming in. They need to know what you need. You know, so be a professional. Yeah, overlapping would be nice. I don't think I've had much overlap in my roles, and yeah, again, you know, being a consultant, sometimes you come into a project and being the first tester on the project, so it's like, yeah, there's no overlap there. Just get on with it.
Yeah, or the person that you do have overlap with. And I think one of you told this story that they're so busy in the last month that they basically just carve out like a day or half a day for you, despite them still being there, because they are so busy offboarding themselves that there isn't actually space to onboard you. Was that one of your stories? I do believe it was, but that's fine. It's still
possibly. I can't remember now. That's probably way back when.
I think you've suppressed that memory, the pain of it. It's just gone.
Yeah, there's too many onboarding, offboarding experiences.
All right.
Can we do a quick story time?
Yeah, of course we can do story time. Go Fearless.
Story time. Fearless story time.
I love story time. Okay, so when I started working at Dutch Railways, I had a bit of a culture shock because I came from a super small company that was a consultancy, and I used to do most of my testing work at another really small company, and everyone there was like unapologetically themselves, would show up to the office wearing whatever, would take their shoes off and like wear little bunny slippers at the office. Like you couldn't be crazy enough there. And so then I went to Dutch Airways, which is like a lot more corporate, and like it's a very friendly environment, but just more corporate than I was used to. And so in the beginning especially, I kind of had trouble telling people apart, because to me everyone just kind of looked really similar, like stock photo models if you Google like people working in an office. And so the people that I had my interviews with as well, I felt they were all quite similar, because they were all like white males in their late 30s or early 40s, and they all had names like I don't know, Paul and Peter and Rod, like just names that are all very similar to me. So the week before I was meant to start, I got a phone call, and I was in a very windy square somewhere, and I was trying to, like, I get a bit nervous on the phone weirdly. So I was trying to hear and trying not to make a tit out of myself, and ended up making more of a tit of myself because this person said their name, which I must have heard but immediately forgot, and said, of Dutch Railways, and like, next week you're starting, and I would like to invite you, if you're onboarding. And I was like, oh great, this must be my manager. So I just filed him away as the one guy that I'd spoken to that I knew was going to be my manager, saved him in my phone as that, and then showed up for the office the next week, and someone else came and picked me up, and me and the other new person as well. So it was like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. But then about 20 minutes in, I tell him, like, hey, by the way, I spoke to this other person last week, and like, they said they were going to get me at reception at like 9, so I don't know if they're there right now, like waiting for me, or if you got in touch with them. And he was like, that was me you spoke to on the phone last week. And I was like, okay, let's forget this ever happened. I'm very sorry.
Well, in a very similar vein, I do a lot of these webcasts and presentations. So my mug is generally quite well known. And the project I just onboarded with is with a lot of testers from my department. And the very first meeting I pop into, everyone was like, oh, hi, and nice to finally a new person. And they were all just very enthusiastically greeting me. And nobody told me what their names actually were. And I was just like, I feel kind of stupid now.
Oh,
I
God.
think you're the people I talk to on the phone, but who the actual fuck are you?
Oh man.
So like the next day I met him again one-on-one, and it was like, now I can add your face to the name and actually know where.
This is where remote onboarding helps, because everyone has a name just down the
Oh,
bottom.
that is so
Yeah.
useful.
Oh, that's
Chris.
perfect.
Yeah, that is very useful.
However,
I
if you
think-
are in person, one top tip in like your first sort of team meeting, and everybody's maybe sitting around a table or something like that, as they're doing the, hey, let's go around the table and tell Shay what you do kind of thing, just sort of draw a square of the table and
Yeah.
just write their names there.
I do
And
that
it's
all the time.
a nice
Yeah.
little aide-memoire, because you can go back in your head and go, okay, that meeting had those people, and you look at that picture and you're like,
Yeah.
okay.
And
That's
Paul was the
Dave.
third from the left, and Chris was the fourth from the right. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's very useful. We are in the last few minutes, so we're going to start rounding up. One tip that you would give for a good onboarding, starting this time the other way around, Veerle.
Wait, do you mean if you're onboarding someone else, or if you're being onboarded?
Give the golden tip, whichever way you want to take it.
Oh my God. Well, I already gave my golden tip away earlier, so
Repeat
I don't
it.
really...
Repeat it.
Okay. No matter what you have discussed during your interview, no matter what you know about the job, ask people, and ask various different people what they think a successful your role looks like. So ask them, what are you expecting of me, and what do you want from me?
Nice. Chris, you're next. Golden tip.
Golden tip. Well, I like Phil's one. I've done that before, but I won't give that as my golden tip. My golden tip is find out just small numbers. Who should I go and talk to, and why? And then talk to those people. Get some time, virtual coffees, real life coffees, whatever. Speak to those people, and then as you're summing up, sort of in that chat with them, ask them who else they would recommend, and then it becomes a natural separation. You can sort of introduce yourself and say, "Oh, hey, Paul told me that I should go and talk to you. And they said you'd be really cool to do this. It'd be great." And then you can slowly but surely build up those relationships and introductions with people. Be proactive.
Cool. Hannah.
Yeah, I'd say don't be afraid to ask questions, even if you're hired as the expert. Like, be humble and ask questions, even though, I mean, people will understand it's always tough to onboard, but that's always the best way to get to know things.
Awesome. Shay.
Have courage to ask those questions. Everybody was new once, so you're not the first person to be new in that company before. So have courage to ask the questions. Take a boatload of notes.
Thanks. Adding on to that, beyond courage, push back and guard your boundaries from day one. If you are telling them I am overloaded and they are not stopping pumping information, keep telling them this is too much, you need to stop. Like, it's worth protecting those boundaries and onboarding yourself better that way. So 5 golden tips. Well, that rounds us off. If you liked 9 out of 10 testers, we do this every month. We are on YouTube, and we will pop our link into the Slack channel. And our next session will be festive rants, because it will be on the 21st of December. And we will just generally be talking about pet peeves, annoyances, and other things that occur at work that piss us off. So it should be a really good one. And we have all committed to wearing some kind of Christmassy thing. So that should be really fun. Thank you everyone for listening. And we're delighted to be here. 9 out of 10 testers saying, are we out yet?
This thing off.
It's off. Are we
This
off?
thing off.
Okay. I think we're off.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
And obviously, thank you to everyone from the 10 out of 10 testers. It was a great session. And as Sane knows, because it happened to us on a conference that we were about a year ago, I'm also very, very bad at faces. But we're going to be back in about 15 minutes with a great session by Hype Shoots about how to not waste time. Really, really recommended. So everyone take 15 off, and we'll be right